They'll come down, inshallah.
Yeah.
Why is my eyes like that?
I don't know. What's going on there? What the hell?
Oh my god. He's got Snapchat filters.
What's happened there?
Why do you just maybe to crack up in Salah?
I'm sorry.
Sharif, you might as well close the blinds.
You know what, I think we're still live, by the way.
Just close the blinds, I think.
Yeah. Okay, sorry, good brother. Sorry, man. We had some weird Snapchat filters going on before. And we all got a bit worried and scared. But anyway, so, okay, I think Brother Wahaj is coming soon, inshallah. And we also have Mustahsin, who is about to sit down. Go on, bismillah.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.
I think we have to edit that beginning bit. That was a bit
Did it
weird,
show
though.
about on the live video?
I think it showed, yeah.
Yeah,
I think.
close it,
Well,
restart.
I think.
Right.
Anyway, so just to make sure, can everybody hear okay? Just so that people can see. Look, I've got a mic.
I don't think. Let me see. There's no one else.
Oh, there we go. Yeah, we're on.
What's
I can see myself.
Look at people.
Yeah, so can everybody hear, inshallah?
Sound is good in Moroccan.
Sorry.
Oh, alhamdulillah.
Welcome.
Wahad, you have to move closer to me. Brother, don't worry, man. Brotherhood. Inshallah. We have, come on, bismillah, man. It's okay. Come on, bismillah, man. Because you know what happens? I get criticised and say, oh, these videos look really rubbish. Yeah, and you say, oh, Wahad, nobody could see you and stuff like that.
Yeah,
So that's why you
can
can do
Yeah, mashallah.
Yeah, so we're a little bit cramped together, but don't worry about that, inshallah.
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay, so I think we've got a few people watching, hopefully. Just make sure that my phone's on silent
Yeah, let me turn my
and I
phone
can see
silent
what's
as
going
well.
on. Yeah, I think. Yeah, okay, wicked. Right. So today we want to discuss about the miracle of the Quran and the linguistic features regards to the Quran and what makes it miraculous and also inimitable. We have Brother Mustahsin, who's here. He's going to answer some questions, or maybe ask some questions, who knows.
I'll be asking the questions.
And also Brother Wahaj, who's still trying to hide. Yeah. And as we call Wahaj, Sheikh Wahaj, don't we?
I'm behind.
I think they're referring to milkshakes.
So Wahaj, you have studied abroad, haven't you?
Yeah, I was fortunate to spend a short time in Egypt, alhamdulillah. So, but studies are still ongoing, so I'm still intending to go back.
So you studied Arabic out there. You did a tafsir.
I think I just finished just a Thanawiyah program at Azhar, so you get general quite wide exposure to topics to a base level. But inshallah, the plans to go back and finish the Jamia, which is the university course, inshallah, in Sharia.
Okay, alhamdulillah. So, if anybody's got any questions regards to some of the specifics regards to the Quran, please ask away. Obviously, these things are informal. We don't have a fixed way of addressing this particular topic. But I think today what we want to really discuss is maybe 2 or 3 areas. One of them is the philosophy of miracles that we as Muslims accept and believe in. The second one is to understand what we mean by the nature of the Quran being miraculous. And potentially looking at from 2 angles. One, from the issue of historical deductive argument, and the second one, maybe looking at more of the linguistic features to understand why we say that the Quran is a objective miracle. What's your thoughts on this?
I think first we should start off with the definition of a miracle, so perhaps you'd like to present us with a definition. What is a miracle?
I think in terms of, obviously, it comes from the Latin word miraculum, where we generally take the term
Oh,
miracle
mashallah.
from. But I think in very simple terms, just for people to have a base appreciation, it's fundamentally something which breaks the basic norms and laws which regulate the universe, and that wouldn't be expected to happen without some type of external intervention. So therefore, if we can elaborately show that the Quran actually proves or provides something as proof which goes outside of this normal regulation or rules or laws that have been put down, then that would probably be the direction we want to push people to show that the Quran isn't from man.
Is that like an agreed definition as well? Or is there other definitions as well of the word
Yeah,
miracle?
I think what it is when you look at the issue of miracle or mu'jiza, something which is inimitable, something which is beyond human production. And I think, or if you want to be even more general about it, it's has no naturalistic explanation.
Okay.
So it requires a non-naturalistic explanation.
Right.
And that's important because, as Wahar just said, when we want to look at the issue of the Quran and if it is a miracle or not, a mu'jiz or not, the question we're asking, is it within the production of nature, which obviously would be human beings as well because we're part of nature, is it within our capability to produce it? If it's not, then it's beyond, it has a non-naturalistic explanation.
Right, okay.
And I think probably one thing to probably discuss is just, I think naturally when you discuss the notion of miracles, if you look at stories of the prophets coming through different scriptures and these types of things, I think there's an association of just fairy tales, stories of the past, and I think that can sometimes cloud people's judgment even before they enter the topic. So it's quite important to probably separate the two.
I've actually got a question here, though. It's part of Islamic theology to hold the belief that the Quran is a miracle. It's like part of the tradition, right? That scholars have spoken about that the Quran is a miracle. So is that in Christianity as well? Do they have that in their tradition that it's not like a fundamental belief that they must believe the Bible is a miraculous or anything like that?
I don't think they say they believe that the Bible's miraculous.
It's because it's interesting because it's not just that the Quran's a miracle, but we actually have to believe that it's a miracle, right?
Yeah, that's right. And I think the point being is this:
because it can still be from God and be not a miracle.
Yeah, the
Yeah,
Quran.
You know what I'm
Yeah,
trying to say?
yeah.
Like,
I think that's because obviously as Muslims, what we believe is that you need to have evidence and proof
yeah, of course.
for the prophethood, and that's the key. And that's why we understand miracles. We understand miracles from the point of view that these are signs and indications that they are truly messengers from the Creator, from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala.
Right.
Otherwise, anybody could provide a claim, for prophethood, and there's no way of assessing whether it's right or wrong.
And I think obviously past prophets, their actual claim to prophethood or the Nabuwa itself wasn't actually through the book itself. It was rather actually through other miracles that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give them. So,
and obviously they were specific miracles for that time.
That's right, yeah, and I think that's an important point because not only were they specific miracles for that time, but there were specific miracles for the people who were aware of that particular subject area where the miracle was being performed in. Yeah, and obviously I think the two clear examples that people often give is Musa alayhi salam, and Fir'aun, and how he had the stick that turned into a snake, and how Fir'aun said, well actually my magicians can do that equally, and so he challenged Musa alayhi salam with the 7 best magicians within the kingdom. And what's really interesting here is that because of Fir'aun, he justified his like godship based upon like these so-called magic, miracle, not even miracles but magic, what the sorcerers were doing for him, so therefore when those people, either magicians and sorcerers, when they challenged Musa alayhi salam, they were able to quickly recognize what's within human capability and what's not within human capability, because they were experts. It's like going back 30,000 years ago and going to people and showing them a lighter. I don't think that's a miracle, isn't it?
mobile phone.
Or mobile phone. The point being is that if you go to people who are already experts, they know what's within human capability and not, especially at that time, and then you do something where the experts say, well, that's impossible, then you can therefore say, well, actually, that's a miracle, not just that.
Right, okay.
Yeah.
So what other prophets could you give as examples of they've come relative to a specific time with a specific miracle?
Any other examples?
Well, the other example is obviously Isa alayhi salam, isn't it? And Isa alayhi salam was, at his time, the people were well into healing.
Medicine, right?
Medicine and healing, that's right. And so he obviously used to heal people, by the permission of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And even, brought somebody back from the dead as well.
Yeah.
Which again, they knew what was capable then. Because he couldn't do anything. If he was a human being, he wasn't he wasn't a prophet, then all he could do is what's within the knowledge, expertise at that time.
Right.
Yeah.
Do you think before you delve into almost even what's a miracle and these types of things, the context needs to be given by why this discussion is probably relevant for people?
Do you know what you mean?
Yeah.
Some people will say, obviously, many people obviously born into Islam and these types of things, and naturally there's a certain inclination that you accept it to be a miracle at its core. But many people would argue don't have to actually necessarily know it with any type of detail, because experts have already elaborated on whatever else. So just the context in terms of what's the relevance of this discussion, actually delving into some of these.
Are you saying the relevance of why the Quran is, why is the topic's important? Or are you saying why
the topic's important?
Yeah, why the topic's important.
I mean, in the context of non-Muslims,
And just so someone can actually follow like a flow or a structure through the discussion.
Right. I mean, just in terms of the topic, like, of course, when you start speaking to different people, whether it's Muslims or non-Muslims, it fundamentally goes back to the question: is the Quran the word of God? So, for example, let's say I'm praying at work or something, and someone asks me, "Why do you pray?" I'll say, "Because God said." How do you know God said? And again, it all goes back to the question, because God said it's in the Quran. Why do you believe the Quran is the word of God? So literally, I think that's why all these misconceptions about Islam, like moral issues, etc. It literally still goes back to the question: is the Quran the word of God? Because once that's answered, then all the other questions are already answered.
Yeah, very definitely.
So I think that's why really it's very important, because I like to take that approach. Just once you answer this question, then all the other questions are answered instead of specifically answering each one.
No, agreed. I think definitely you have to go to the root, isn't it?
Yeah, and of course for a Muslim, of course it's very important, because I think was it you said that Imam Juwayni said that it's something. What is it that it's upon a Muslim to acknowledge, to know, as the Quran says. What does it say? Know that
to rationally prove that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala.
It's generally accepted amongst the Asha'ira that you have to have a rational basis for your belief.
Yeah. So you see, that's why
for the books of Aqidah from them.
Yeah. I think it's definitely important. I think moving on to the topic specifically of the Quran.
Oh yeah. And lastly, of course, it's just to destroy doubts, because of course, if you have that firm belief, you know why you believe, and of course, then when you have doubts come across, alhamdulillah, obviously with that firm belief, you're able to obviously overcome the doubts. So of course, that's probably why we are speaking about the topic, because it's a serious topic to speak about. But yeah.
So I was going to say, just moving on, I think going back to that point about philosophy of miracles within the Islamic perspective, I think as Muslims, obviously, we believe that it's a non-naturalistic explanation. Secondly, from the text, the Quran and the Sunnah, when they talk about the previous prophets, they talk about how the people had a certain level of knowledge and capability in the area by which they were, the miracle came. And the third aspect was that there was a challenge as well. Yeah, so it's not essential that there's a challenge, but there was a challenge to the people to try to replicate what occurred. So Isa alayhi salam was challenged. Yeah, Musa alayhi salam was challenged. And so when we look at those three things, then we have to look at, with regards to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, what was his miracle? And we know that the Prophet sallallahu had numerous miracles, but the main one, the one that really established him amongst the Arabs, was the Quran itself.
Yes.
Yeah.
So may I ask, what was the purpose of other miracles if the Quran was the actual miracle?
Is it?
Which was
Just to really shore it up. No excuse.
Yeah, obviously, Quran's timeless, and it's what all the generations. That's probably why.
Yeah, but no, it's all generations. Quran is obviously is for all generations as well. And I think the issue is this: is that what was it? That actually created. What was it? Why was it the Quran? Why is it a linguistic miracle? Can it be a miracle? What is it regards to that? And I think to answer that point, when we talk about linguistic miracle, it's because if you look at the Arabs, they didn't have any expertise except one thing, and that was the Arabic language.
Right.
Yeah, it was the most important thing to them. So maybe if you see the stick turn into a snake, it's like a visual miracle, isn't it?
Right.
You're sensing it with your eyes. But with the Quran, when you're hearing it recited, it's an auditory miracle.
Yes.
You're hearing it with your ears. So you're still using these senses to make this judgment.
Yes. So Shall we start the topic? No.
Well, we can start. I thought we already had.
The actual linguistic miracle of the
Okay.
Quran. So, perhaps Wahad, do you want to
Sheikh Wahad.
elaborate what is the linguistic miracle of the Quran? And yeah, so what is the linguistic?
What is the linguistic miracle of the Quran?
Yeah.
Linguistic miracle of the Quran is fundamentally it came with a text, which we would state, was higher in status, in strength, in quality, in terms of usage of the language. Nothing has come which has obviously superseded it, and nothing can come that can supersede it. So that's like the base of just appreciating what is the actual challenge itself. It obviously started off with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala challenging the Quraysh through the Quran to bring a book like it. And obviously tying back into Sharif's point, which you discussed previously, the Arabs were known for poetry. It was an oral transmission. Even basic things like knowing their lineage back to Adam alayhi salam, and that would be the connecting point between different Arab tribes and knowing where they were connected, what lineage they had, etc. Right the way through. Even if you look at the main Arabic poetry, which is known as mu'allaqat, some said it was hung in the Kaaba, some said it was ordained by a king, some said but it was written in gold and preserved, and these were known to be the standalone best pieces in Arabic poetry. And these pieces of poetry were produced by certain poets pre-Islam. Now we have a general collection of the poetry, the language, through oral transmission, and some of it's obviously physically recorded, but part of that was done at a later date, for about 200 years prior. Okay, and the argument is that the Arabs were at the height of the language. So if there was any population that would have been able to meet the challenge of the Quran, it should have been the Quraysh or the Arabs at that time. Initially, the challenge started with us, or basically challenging them to bring a book like it. Because they weren't able to bring a book like it, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala challenged them to bring 10 Ashra surah, so 10 surahs like it. And after they obviously fell short even on that, then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala told them to produce فَأْتُوا بِمِثْلِهِ وَادْعُوا شُهَدَاءَكُم مِّن دُونِ اللَّهِ إِن كُنتُمْ صَادِقِينَ, to even bring a surah like it, and to call unto all your helpers besides Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, if indeed you are truthful to your claim. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, فَإِن لَمْ تَفْعَلُوا وَلَن تَفْعَلُوا, so Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that they never did it and they never will. Okay, so this was a testing from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that they will never actually reach the miracle, or be able to actually produce something like the Quran. And the interesting point is that I just took a small part. Some people will say, okay, it's a rejected measure. Sometimes it can be taste, isn't it? So some people will argue, Mustasin, like, especially here in Western society, the big thing about music, you can go into rap, you can go into different things, you can go into poetry. And a lot of people will argue that actually it can just come down to taste. Okay?
Right, yeah.
And I think that's probably one of the key things that you really need to, that we'll go through. And I just want to give one quick example, which I just took. It was actually a famous poet by Hassan bin Thabit. And the Arabs had an area called Suq al-Awqaf. Now Hassan bin Thabit, interesting story, he was actually the poet of the Prophet ﷺ. Okay, he lived for 120 years, 60 years before Islam, 60 years after. And there's a lady, Khunsa, who eventually became Muslim as well. And this is just to give one little small example of what the science of critique was amongst the Arabs. Okay, so he narrates two famous lines of Arabic poetry. Okay, within it says, "Lana al-jufanat al-ghuru yalma'ana lid-duha wa asiyafuna yaqutturna min najdatin dama wa ladna bani al-unqa wa ibni muharriq fa akrim bina khalan wa akrim bina ibnama." Okay. This is two lines of poetry, and Khunsa, who's obviously someone who he's refuting or speaking against, she comes and she basically pulls out 8 mistakes straight away that he's made within the language. Now, little examples of this can be seen. So, when he uses the word jufanat is related to stuff in the language, how a word can be transformed in order to change its meaning, but it may still have the same root letters. Okay?
Right.
So, derivatives from a root word, and it's called morphology as a general science. So she says that the very fact they used the form of jufanat, which is fu'alat, that restricts it to 10. Okay?
10 what?
So it's relating to basically. One second.
I think you might need to speak up a bit as well, by the way, or maybe get closer to the mic.
Why?
Because they're saying it's not loud enough.
Oh, really? It's not loud enough.
I don't know, man. We said it. We've got a mic here and everything.
Volume isn't loud enough.
Right. Oh no, don't. Inshallah, Bismillah. He'll speak up.
No, wait. Is it? It might just be the actual mic.
Yeah, it is probably the mic. So we'll have to speak
Right.
up.
Can you? Oh, okay, that's fine.
Right.
No.
So I'm just going to give a few examples, and just to show how critical the Arabs were, and it was something known as naqd. Okay, so if someone was a naqid, there would be like a critic, yeah,
Okay, right.
specifically in the Arabic poetry, and it was something that was known amongst the Arabs. Okay, so they're very objective measures to say whether a piece of poetry was good or bad. So the first line, "Lana jufanat al-ghurwi yalman bid-duha." So jufanat comes from jufan, which is basically like a big dish that they used to serve guests within. Okay, so guests would come and this is the dish that they would fill with food. Okay, so he's obviously referring to the fact that they've got many of these. Okay, and they would basically treat guests that would come through the day and this obviously related to their generosity. Okay, so it's obviously building himself.
Metaphorical, isn't it?
It's metaphorical. It's a big pride about his people and how they treat the guests. As obviously, and in Arabic they say yatafakhar. Okay, what's a good English equivalent? Like bigging one up,
Right.
self one up.
Okay.
Yeah. So just in that one line as an example, she pulls out two mistakes. Okay.
Right.
She said jufanat. She says that the pattern that he's used restricts it to 10, the maximum number of dishes that could be meant with that itself. And she said if he said jafan, it would have meant more. So straight away, there's one element of critique for that specific line. Okay, this is half a line, by the way. She's pulling out two mistakes. The next one she says yalma'lu bid-duha. Okay, so this is relating to actually being very honourable with your guests during the day. Now she says that if you said that you were honourable to your guests through the night, she said it would have had greater meaning. Why? Because the majority of guests that used to visit used to be through the night.
Most dawats are through the night.
Most hours are through the night.
You know what I mean?
Evenings, whatever else, yeah?
Okay.
By the way, it's Arafah, yeah? So excuse the drive through.
Yeah.
So this is just one example. Then she goes on and she gives examples of يَقْطَرْنَ مِنَ النَّجْدِ الدِّمَاء, etc. So he says أَشْيَاخُنَا, and this again restricts it to 10. He actually says that if she instead حَثَى مِنْ ثَابِت, if he used suyuf, it would have meant more than 10. So it would have had a greater meaning. And in this second line, he's basically saying that we've got a mass of swords, yeah, and whenever we come to battle, yeah, we spill a lot of blood. Obviously now this is talking about bravery and obviously the strength of the tribe that he's referring to. So she now pulls out another mistake. She then says that when he says najdatin dama, okay, just a small little variation, he says that if she said instead dima,
Right.
it would have meant excessive amounts of blood and it would have meant more.
Okay.
So this is just one line of Arabic poetry, okay? And obviously I can go in for the other line later on maybe if needed, but just to give you an example that they were very specific about what critique of Arabic poetry meant, okay?
Wow.
So this is one line that's been given. She's pulled out 4 mistakes very quickly, and this is without going into the nahu, which is the grammatical composition.
Balagha.
They've not delved into the balagha, okay, metaphorically. They've delved into the balagha from duha, the word itself, about the guests, etc. But there's many other aspects you can actually delve into. That's just at a surface level. Now you imagine that this is on one line of poetry. She's pulled out 4 mistakes, and then the Quran comes as a book, and through its entire succession of 23 years, they've not been able to identify one single mistake where something's gone wrong grammatically.
Oh wow.
Yeah. So, you know, for me, really, when I was reading around, so you've got basic famous books like Al-Baqilani's Ijaz al-Quran, you've got Jurjani's Dala'il al-Ijaz. They're really the 2 foremost, yeah, that delved solely just into the linguistic aspect, and they're very clear that that is the miracle of the Quran, yeah. But this is, we've only touched on surface level meaning. We could delve into grammar, we can go into syntax, we can go into structure, we can go into balagha, which is rhetoric. So there's so many different dimensions, and the Arabs in their entirety, from the best of the Arabs, right the way from Walid bin Mughira, right the way to Utbah bin Rabi'a, right the way to people like Labid, who was one of the Sahib al-Mu'allaqat, and the famous Arabic poems that were written. He was actually one of the authors, okay? And he actually, after hearing Surah Al-Kawthar, when he came to get medicine for his uncle or his father, actually embraced Islam just by hearing Surah Al-Kawthar 3. And this is a guy who was known, who's written one of the 7 best pieces of Arabic
So
poetry.
he was one of the 7
one of the
Mu'allaqat
7
authors.
Yeah. Then you've got people like Ka'b bin Zuhayr, who's again a very famous poet. So him and his brother set off on a journey. They lived outside of Medina. They heard about the Prophet ﷺ, and they were on their road to accept Islam. So on the journey, Ka'b ibn Zuhayr tells his brother, "You go. I'm gonna go back." Yeah, obviously having self-doubts, etc. So Ka'b ibn Zuhayr goes back, and his brother ended up embracing Islam before him. And then Ka'b ibn Zuhayr actually wrote the first ever satire about the Prophet ﷺ, yeah, because his brother embraced Islam, and obviously mucked both of them together. And then after a later period, he actually embraced Islam himself, and he actually wrote the first ever Qasida Burda.
Oh,
Yeah.
right, okay.
And the interesting thing is, there's a quote by the Prophet ﷺ about Labid, the famous poet from obviously the Sahih al-Mu'allaqat, and says, "Kullu ma khala Allah huwa batil." And he basically says that everything other than Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is in vanity and wasteful. And this is just to give like a small glimpse about the objective criteria was very clear. Those that were the experts recognized it quicker, okay, and didn't come up with a single critique. Now in the modern day, you've got obviously Orientalists who have tried to go back in the Hadani Sahiran, and they'll say, okay, ism inna, they'll say that it's actually should give nasab, and therefore the next word isn't coming on the correct pattern, and therefore there's a mistake in it. But these things have been, you know, a child that studies in year 5, year 6 through an Egyptian Azari system will be able to tell you that it's known amongst the Arabs that this variation was allowed, this variation was allowed. So it's just to give a little touch that it was objective. That's number one. Okay. Before we go into like a structured argument, the experts were all fully aware of the challenge.
Right.
Okay. And the nature of the challenge. They also all accepted that it didn't come on any of the patterns of the previous poetry. Okay. Which we'll delve into later on. Yeah. So just to give a clear picture of that, it was very objective. It's not something where we can say it was subjective to taste. You liked it, I liked it, he liked it. That actually, he just didn't have a good taste for it, yeah? And a lot of people almost superimpose their taste about music and other things onto it, don't they? Where they think, I like something, but he necessarily doesn't. It can be the same with food or whatever else. Just to be clear that within Arabic itself, the language and the poetry, there's a very objective measure where you can say that this is better than this. Yeah? So just want to lay that as a base introduction.
I've got nothing really to add, but alhamdulillah, I think that was a great introduction. But just to ask a question here. So you said obviously the challenge there was certain criteria to measure it. So why is it that scholars to this day, throughout centuries, they've had different, they've come up with different explanations as to what is the challenge. Some say it's this. So what is it? All of them? Is it one of them? Someone that I spoke to, he said it's not even the challenge that he believes that it refers to is that it's the impact that the Quran has had.
Yeah, definitely.
And so everyone has different, in that sense, what is exactly the challenge? Why is it not agreed upon?
I think the statement everyone has different is probably incorrect itself. But just to start with, on the way here, just for a bit of Muslim actually, I was listening to Sheikh Tariq Suwaidan, and he goes for an explanation of al-Baqillani, and he says that Abu Hayyan, who was a famous historicist known within the language to be a master, he collated various aspects around the miracle and the language itself. And he said he was asked, narrates a famous example, and he says, where is the mawdi' of the ijaz in the Quran? Where can I point to it and say this is a miracle?
Right.
And he says the question is so silly because it's like asking where is a human in a human? Or where is a water in water?
Right.
And I think firstly we have to be clear is that one thing, what is the objective thing that everyone does agree upon? They agree that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala revealed the Quran. They reveal that it was a superior aspect of Arabic, okay, that no one has matched, no one will, okay, and especially the fact that the Arabic language has gone through a linguistic deterioration over time. They also agree upon the fact that the book as a whole is a miracle. Now some people may differ, okay, does that mean that the miracle lies in every single word itself? We would say it lies in every single ayah, and in every single surah, and in the book as a whole.
Right.
Okay, so that's number one. And at minimum, we would say 3 ayat at minimum, because obviously the challenge was to just produce a surah like it. Okay, so that's one. You did have some difference amongst the scholars, so they said within the aspects of the language, what specific aspects were the miraculous elements of it? So was it actually the syntax? Okay. Was it related to the effect? Was it related to the structure of obviously how the words are pronounced, the effect it creates? Some scholars, and this is a view that actually stems from Mu'tazila, had this concept of sarfa, where they basically said that rather than the Quran itself being miraculous, they said Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala removes the ability of the Arabs to actually match the Quran. Yeah? So the ulama refute this very clearly because they say that you had people who reached great heights in the Arabic language, like Al-Mutanabbi and many people that came after Islam. Yeah. So he says that theory pretty much falls on its face. The only thing they would say is, I think there's a general majority, and the two most foremost books are definitely from Baqillani and Jurjani, who were written in very early periods, and they pretty much agree that it lies within the balagha, syntax. Aspects when it comes to effect and all these types of things come after, but we just have to be clear that when we talk about the miracle itself, it has to be something that the Quraysh appreciated.
Right.
And this obviously takes us into a separate topic as well, because many people will say, obviously, you come with historical elements, you come with science elements, you come with geographical elements, you come with other aspects of what we would perceive to be a miraculous element of the Quran. But was that actually what the Arabs appreciated it for? To actually turn around and say this can't be from man. And the very fact.
What do you think?
No, I agree with that. Yeah,
No,
that makes sense.
Yeah, so I would say that the underlying miracle is agreed upon.
Right.
Some of the intricacies about whether certain almost external compositions which are linked to the language, they fall into the aspects of miracle as well. I think that's probably where you had more of a discussion or probably difference amongst the scholars. And then in the modern day, you've obviously had a big influence. I recently read a book by Rafai, who is, I think he's originally from Egypt, but he goes completely down the scientific line and popularized that. But he also touches language.
I think a lot of what I've noticed as well is a lot of Muslims, especially da'is, people go out there and try to discuss Muslim apologists and all that type of thing. I don't think they fully appreciate how to explain the mu'jiz of the Quran. Yeah, I recently watched this series of videos that try to explain why the Quran is a mu'jiza, and it tends to go down the route of look at these gems in the Quran. Yeah, like the Noman Ali Khan.
But they are miraculous aspects.
No, they are miraculous, but you have to. I think the issue is
it's
that
individual features. They're not actually the miracle itself.
All right, as a whole.
And also you have to. What I think you have to do is you have to frame the argument, and I think that's where people struggle. They can say like what I said, that there is something within the Quran that nobody can match. But a lot of people they can't frame the argument correctly. Yeah, and I think that's the problem. And the way I tend to frame the argument is this. Is firstly prove that the Arabs had a high level of capability in the Arabic language, to be aware of that. And that's why I think I mentioned it in a previous post of mine, is that sometimes with the Quran, people struggle because it's not like proof of the existence of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You don't need any information. You just need to think in it. Rationally you can go through these things. But when it comes to the issue of the Quran, you have to have some priori knowledge, isn't it? You have to have some background knowledge towards this, And so the first thing I look at is, okay, when was the Quran revealed, or when was it known to human beings? And I would say, every generation has known it up to the 7th century. So before the 7th century, nobody mentions it. After the 7th century, people are mentioning it.
Right.
The 7th century. So the question then becomes, okay, who could be the potential author within that? The second thing that I would say is regards to the Arabs. Are they capable, as I mentioned before, in the Arabic language? Wahaj's given so much detail, alhamdulillah, regards to that. But also, what I would also say is just to explain the point, which is that with a people who preserve their history and their honor and their lineage and their names through poetry, then poets are incredibly important in that society, because they are like the ones that preserve the tribe, its battles, its history.
There'd be sense in every aspect of society, isn't it?
I think they say, isn't it? The Arab tribes, they would celebrate the birth of two, isn't it? The birth of a chief's son and the birth of a poet from their tribe.
Yeah, I've heard that.
Yeah, because this was so important, and that's why you had mu'alliqat. That's why you had, the different regions around the Kaaba. They would compete. They would compete in these different parts of the marketplaces in order to recite the best poetry. That's why they used to become quite famous. So you have that second premise. Okay, first one, 7th century. Second one, that the Arabs had capability in the Arabic language. The third one, which is, did they have a desire to destroy Islam?
Yes.
Yeah. So we can prove that through the numerous wars against the Prophet ﷺ and the Sahaba, the torture against the Sahaba, the boycott against the Prophet ﷺ and the Sahaba, the slander that they did. You know, they had like 30,000 troops or so, or 10,000 troops at Battle of Ahzab, isn't it? Trying to wipe out Medina. Yeah, so they had a desire to destroy Islam. Now the Quran comes and it says, produce 3 sentences like the Quran, 1 surah like the Quran, to a people who are highly, highly capable in the Arabic language.
And just to add to that, the 3 ayah they had to produce didn't have to be a story, didn't have to be a formulated argument, didn't have to be just 3 ayahs. Yeah, just to give it context.
That's right. And then on top of that, they had the intent, to destroy Islam. So what you've got is basically this. If you've got capability and intent, what do you get? Action, isn't it?
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah. So if the capability is to match the Quran and the intent is to match the Quran or to destroy Islam, you're going to get, if they had the capability, matching the Quran.
Obviously, the action was through violence, because they couldn't.
No, they couldn't. They couldn't,
The
isn't
fact
it?
that they resorted to alternative means meant
Right.
that
Oh,
right.
right.
So
You're saying
indication-
first they tried to imitate and they couldn't, so therefore.
that would be the natural
That's
process.
the
wouldn't
natural.
it?
The Quran is saying this is the reason why this is from God.
And when you pride yourself on your level of Arabic poetry, and that's the very thing that obviously you build the strength of your tribe on in terms of how you speak about yourself, your family, you belittle others, that's the very medium of communication, to put down and lift up others in society, and it's common that means, and then you would expect them to obviously come to that challenge.
So the point being, so we proved that that 7th century, then we proved that they were highly capable, then we proved that many of the Arabs wanted to destroy Islam, the Quraysh wanted to destroy Islam. So if you've got intent and capability, but you don't have
the action.
That's right, of imitating the Quran, the surah.
Right. Okay.
It means one of the two's missing, the intent or the capability. Well, it's not the intent.
Right, because
So it must be good.
It must be capability.
Right. Okay.
Yeah. So therefore, what we can then say, okay, if we look at the historical deductive argument and we say who could have been the author of the Quran in the 7th century, well, there's 4 possibilities: the non-Arab, the Arab, the Prophet ﷺ, or Allah Subhanahu wa Taala.
Is that a second argument, or is that connected to the?
It's connected. It's connected.
Sometimes I just use that as let's say, just an argument on its own.
Yeah, you
Well,
can do
use that. Yeah.
But I'm just saying, you're building the premises to the argument.
Right.
You can say, okay, non-Arabs because they're not got capability. Well, Arabs, just like what we just said.
Just on the point about non-Arabs, it's actually a good example where a guy called Nadr bin Harith, who basically had travelled a lot of the Arabian Peninsula, and then also travelled to the Romans and other areas, and had a lot of stories to narrate. So he literally used to just collect stories, come back and narrate them, and he built his repertoire in that way. And that argument itself is actually refuted in the Quran itself, because Nadr bin Harith used to sit next to the Prophet ﷺ to take people away from listening to the Prophet ﷺ initially, and then the Quran was revealed, and what they said was one of the accusations against the Prophet ﷺ was that it was a man called Ar-Rahman from Yamama that was teaching the Prophet ﷺ all of this. And that also one that says in Surah Al-Nahl, قال يؤلبهم البشر لسان الذين يلحدون إليه أعجمي وهذا لسان عربي مبين, that they claim that it's a man that is teaching him. Well, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that indeed that the language or the tongue of the foreigner will indeed make mistake in Arabic. And this indeed is a clear Quranic text. So even Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala self-refutes that within the Quran itself.
That's right. So therefore what you've got then is you've got no replication of the Quran. 7th century, they were the best in the Arabic language. They had the desire to destroy Islam, but they didn't produce anything like Islam. Like the Quran. So we know that now. So therefore we can say, okay, the Arabs couldn't have produced it, because if they could, they would have, and if they would have, they would have sought to destroy Islam, and we wouldn't have had Islam today, because the intellectual basis of Islam would have been destroyed 1400 years ago by the Arabs themselves. They would have said it has been proven. So you've got that aspect. So then it only leaves with the Prophet ﷺ, Allah Subhanahu wa Taala.
What's that hadith about the Prophet that was struggling with poetry, and he said, "By Allah, I am not a poet." There's one of the Sahabas or something that.
I mean, there's some narrations about how the Prophet ﷺ would not be able to recite poetry.
I don't know if that comes to mind.
Shake.
Milkshake maybe. But one point that's very clear is the fact that the Prophet ﷺ always maintained a very distinct and separate tonality and a method of reciting the Quran relative to speech, and they said that it's proven linguistically that it'd be impossible to maintain that over a 23-year period and not even have a single report of him having recited either Quran in his normal tonality or.
Was there an actual study done? I think there was a psychological.
Yeah, I
study.
remember Hamza Zortis mentioned this point quite a while ago.
Yeah.
To maintain it over a 23-year period would be impossible.
But not only just that, but also you got to look at that the Prophet Sallallahu, he's only going to be able to take knowledge and the abilities of his own people, isn't it? So it means that the information, the knowledge exists within society. Yeah. So if if it's a human being that's replicating something or producing something, like a poetry or prose or whatever it is, or painting, then he's taking the tools and the technology and the information at that time.
Right.
Which means that if one person can do it, another person can replicate it. Yeah. It's like, for example, Shakespeare. He was famous for writing the iambic pentameter, which is a 5-beat per verse poetry. Yeah. And he was the first one to do that. But as soon as he's done it, people can then break it down and produce it themselves.
Yeah.
So whatever one individual can do, another person can do. The other thing also, it's also important to note as well, is that when the Prophet ﷺ was reciting the poetry, there was no ability to correct it once it's been recited. So there will be an incident, like I think there was 3 Christian priests, isn't it, that came to Mecca. And they came to Mecca and they basically asked, who is Allah? And Surah Al-Ikhlas was revealed, Qul huwallahu ahad. Yeah? So this was revealed in that incident, in regards to that. Now there's no way that the Prophet ﷺ can now say, actually, I need to just re-edit a particular verse.
Yeah, because once it was described.
Once it's recited, people heard it. If he made a mistake in anybody's hearing of that verse, they would have pointed it out, the Arabs at that time, and basically used that as propaganda against Prophet ﷺ. And that's impossible. That's like over 6,000 verses, of reciting with no post-edit. And then not being able to, and not anybody being able to point out an error or an incorrectness within that. So I think that point. Go on, sorry, you saying?
I mean, this is slightly going off a bit, but so are we saying that obviously part of the miracle of the Quran is that the word choice that's used, that you can never ever replace a better word for it?
Yeah.
Right, and even the fact that it's concise as well, that it does it in a small amount of words and it's comprehensive.
I mean, now we're asking the question of what is it within the Quran.
Right,
so I think you're right. From a historical deductive argument, you can prove that it's impossible for that non-Arabs, Arabs, or the Prophet ﷺ to produce the Quran. Therefore, you're only left with one possibility, which is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Another way to look at it and understand it is maybe to look at the linguistic features within the Quran itself.
Well, just on that point about even if the Prophet ﷺ had brought it, then it should have been possible for someone else to have replicated it as well, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So, but just going on to the linguistic features of it.
So we're just now we're starting the actual linguistic features, yeah?
Yeah, we can do,
Because I've got obviously some questions as well.
You got a shake here.
In terms of like ways to look the frank really is in terms of actually appreciating Arabic, you can touch on very common points that people go through in certain aspects of language, but if you reduce it down, it's simply just a feature of the Arabic language that you're looking at. So I think from an example perspective, delving into that, I think
the problem is though, is that because we don't study English literature to the level of the Arabs study Arabic, and also English is it's a very narrow language, when you compare it to Arabic, isn't it, Waj?
It's interesting because I was actually listening to a lecture specifically on the topic, but he just talked about one comparison, which was the fact that I think Arabic has around 50,000 to 60,000 root words itself. Within English, you've got 15,000 to 20,000. Just to give you an example of expanding upon it. And within each Arabic word, you've got something called mushtaqat. Mushtaqat is basically you start with 3 root letters, and it can transform. So you have a fi'l madi, dhahaba, yadhabu, idhab, dhahabin.
And they all link.
They all link in terms of meaning back to the root. But because of the transformation it takes, it changes the meaning. So even sabara yasbiru, if I could do it saburun, saburun, sabirun, you can have so many variations, but you can have up to 40 variations within Arabic of that single word. Yeah? So imagine 50,000 root words, and each of them you've got 40 possible derivatives.
Wow.
Mm.
Okay. Right.
Just get an idea in terms of like
How broad.
vastness of the language.
So obviously there's a difference between English, the way we study it as well, and the way the Arabs study it. So for example, we don't study things like rhetoric, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah, 100%.
So for example, in Arabic, once you've studied sarf and nahu, yeah,
Go to balagha,
you
yes.
go to balagha, which is rhetoric, and rhetoric is the only way that you really understand what is the objective miracle of the Quran.
Right.
Yeah. And so obviously you've got morphology and you've got grammar, and then you've got this, rhetoric, yeah, which is broken down into 3 separate sciences as well, yeah, like ilm al-ma'ani,
Ma'ani,
Yeah.
bayan, and badi'.
that's right. So knowledge of science of meaning, yeah, science of expression, so whether it's literal or metaphorical, yeah, and science of embellishment,
like a beautification of
yeah,
it.
beautification of it. So it's very clear, and I think obviously have you studied ilm al-ma'ani?
I think everyone goes through base text in
Yeah.
balagha, but one perspective that's what I think you have to.
Did you come across the? Did you study the point about emphasis? When do you emphasize, when you don't?
Yeah, that's generally you cover it even from a nahu perspective.
No, as in,
to balagha.
for example, the audience. If the audience is questioning.
Yeah, 100%. So you've
Yeah.
got 3 levels, haven't you? So depending on the level of conviction you're looking to imply or the level of rejection you're going to oppose, that will dictate how much emphasis you place within the wording of that. So if I put in, if I was speaking to someone very neutral, very open, very sincere, there'd be no need for me to add further emphasis because I can trust that he's going to take the base level argument and discussion, reflect upon it, and if it's true, accept it. If you get some level of animosity, some level of insincerity, or questioning to some degree, you would maybe add one element of emphasis, yeah? So you'd maybe add inna or something you'd add to the verb, that would add a level of emphasis, alhamdulillah. And then the third level would be multiple levels of emphasis in response in order to emphasize that specific point, and that obviously comes in the Quran in different forms relative to who it was addressing.
Yeah, that's right. That would come if somebody disagrees with you. So the point being is this.
So you said there's more emphasis that's placed on.
No, this would be this is ilm al-balagha under ilm al-ma'ani, and under ilm al-ma'ani there are sub-sciences within that. And one of the sub-sciences is to emphasizing. That's why I was saying to how objective the process.
Okay.
And what it says about emphasis is basically, as Wahaj mentioned, is it depends upon your audience, your listener.
Right. Okay.
So is the person you're speaking to, does he agree with you? Is he confused about you? Or is he disagreeing with you? Is he against you? Right.
Okay.
So in the Quran you'll find there'll be no emphasis because the audience that's being addressed, you don't have to say this is the audience, it's known through the context. The audience that it's addressing are those people who are agreeing with what's being said in the text. Then there'll be certain verses where you'll find emphasis. Yeah.
Just one example of this. The brother actually correcting us with the nahu just the start of it. Yeah. So it should have been وَلَقَدْ نَعْلَمُ أَنَّهُمْ يَقُولُونَ إِنَّمَا يُعَلِّمُهُ بَشَرٌ. So doing this point I made about the Nadr bin Haris who used to sit and narrate stories and the Quraysh used him to try attracting people away from the Prophet ﷺ.
Right.
So in that ayah, obviously they're coming with an argument against the Prophet ﷺ, and they're looking to almost disprove his nubuwah and disprove the Quran itself by saying what? That it came from a foreign person, Ajami. And then in this, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala uses وَلَقَدْ, which is a level of emphasis, نَعْلَمُ أَنَّهُمْ. So there's 2 levels of emphasis even before you enter. يَقُولُونَ إِنَّمَا يُعَلِّمُ. 3 levels of emphasis within.
So you would have 3, isn't it? Because this is a person who's disagreeing with you.
And because it's addressing specific, and you know what level, or whether it's a refutation, whether it's a rejection, whether it's animosity, whether it's insincerity, your language would come relative to that. Every part of the miracle you discuss, you have to link it back to this point about the Quraysh did not find anything that could be replaced to have greater meaning. That is the experts of the language equal. That they could either provide something as an equivalent, or each of these features that we discussed, they could say that actually in this place this could be used, and actually could have had greater effect.
Mm.
This word could have been used and had greater effect. This could have been changed in order and would have had greater effect.
Right. Okay.
That in every aspect of the language, and it might actually be a nice topic to go through, just giving people an overview of balagha as a topic
Sure,
itself,
next time, yeah.
covering some of people obviously confuse balagha and fusha, yeah. So not every kalam that's from fasaha is baligh, yeah. But every statement which is baligh from balagha is made up of fasaha, yeah.
You're
Fusha,
talking about
yeah?
rhetoric and eloquence.
Rhetoric and eloquence, and
Yeah.
people sometimes confuse them too as well.
Yeah.
So that's, and some of them points give you a good basis to just approach the topic itself. But each feature that you go through has to be pinned back to this rational framework, which is that those that were the best in the language couldn't come with something which could even change a single harf
Mm.
and say actually
Mm.
it would have added to the meaning,
Because
would have
yeah.
added to the effect, would have added to anything within that.
Because this is the point. Point being is that just on the issue of emphasis, you could then go through the Quran and have an objective way to say, well, actually, the emphasis here should have been 2 or should have been 0, and yet there's emphasis, it's inappropriate, etc.
Based on the audience.
Yeah, based
Right,
upon the
yeah,
audience. Because you said, well, actually, they agree with you, so why is there emphasis
Right.
here?
Right. I get
Yeah. So they could change. You could actually go and analyze the verses of
So-
Quran just on that. That's just one aspect.
Yeah, I see
There's
what
other
you're
aspects of regards to that as well.
So let's get some questions.
So,
here.
I just wanted
Yeah,
to
yeah.
touch on one point. I think Abu Muhammad mentioned a point about is the miracle from the Abhar or
Oh,
the
yeah, yeah.
eloquence, yeah.
Oh,
Um,
Muhammad.
Just
Oh.
want to touch.
Muhammad Ali.
Oh, is he still here?
Just want to touch one specific point on
Yeah.
that specific
Yes,
question, which obviously comes up. All of the Arabic language can be broken down into two key areas. Yeah, you've got shi'r, which is poetry, and you've got nathar, which is prose. Yeah, and within the poetry, you've got obviously urud, and urud is basically the formation of how language takes place in poetry. So classically, it's made up of 2 lines, which make up one specific bayt. Okay, and these lines are done on very specific patterns. Okay.
Rhythmical beats.
Rhythmical beats. So, as an example, there's a famous Arabic book which a lot of people will eventually study called Alfiya bin Malik. That comes on a specific pattern, and that pattern goes mustaf'ilun, 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 mustaf'ilun. So, what will happen? You can have variations to this, but every single aspect,
So you're giving a beat then.
every single aspect of now how that poem is constructed will follow that pattern.
Right.
Certain patterns use a combination, okay? And each of the combinations can then have further edits, like they may have specific letters removed from the end, they might have specific changes at the end, etc. And that's something maybe in like a future one we can just go through like a practical
So
example.
basically, al-bihar.
Al-Bihar are, if you, so there's obviously Khalid bin Ahmed al-Farahidi, infamous scholar in Islam, used to be a master of the language. The famous story goes is that he went to the Kaaba and made dua, and he was a teacher of Sibawayh. And if anyone knows Sibawayh, al-Kitab, like infamous in the Arabic language, yeah? One of the masters of the Arabic language for its history, and he actually came from a Persian origin.
For grammar and
Yeah. So, Sibawayh, some say maybe preceded him in the language or superseded him, but Khalid bin Ahmed made dua to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to bless him with another science. Yeah? And Allah, the famous story goes is that he was walking through Suq al-Nuhas, which is like a bronze market, and as people are obviously constructing things out of bronze, they're obviously tapping and making beats. Yeah?
Right.
And to this, as he's reciting poetry, he starts formulating patterns. Yeah? And he starts linking the two together. So what he did on the back of this is obviously how the science emerged. He basically inquired and surveyed the entire plethora of Arabic poetry. Okay, that was existent. Obviously, that's going to be limited at that time because you're looking at maybe 200 years and you're looking at the best, the worst, but surveying the entire and looking at what patterns were all of those pieces of poetry built upon. Okay, these are what al-bihar are. Now he, out of the surveying, produced 15. So he found 15 patterns which were common in all Arabic poetry, and then his student, and the name first comes to mind, but I can't remember the student's name off the top of my mind. I can get it for people that are interested. He came and then added the 16. And one of the blessings from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala was that this closed off the science, because no other poetry has ever existed in Arabic which has not been on one of these 16 parameters.
So basically, there's 16 different beats or
Yes,
rhythms in
100%,
poetry,
yes.
Okay.
and they're known as al-bihar.
Al-Bihar, yes. And then Qafiyah, which is a science which interlinks with it, is the ending. Okay, so the ending can be varied, formulated. You can have cutting of letters, additional letters, but the ending is related to qafiya, and that's a science which interlinks with urud, and this basically produces the whole notion of Arabic poetry. Okay, so they're the key things that fall into this poetry. Now, you've got poetry and you've got prose. Okay, so the scholars unanimously agree that the Quran doesn't fall into any one of these specific aspects of the Arabic poetry.
Prose is just unrhythmical
Speech, yeah.
Yeah.
And we know that the Quran has aspects of that, and it has aspects of rhythmical speech as well. So they said that what would happen is, say for example, if someone wrote a poem on saj'a. Saj'a is just rhyming patterns, yeah. Pop, drop, hop, cop, yeah. The Quran doesn't in any way, from start to finish. And what would happen classically, if poets wrote poetry, they would, if they adopted that style, they would follow it through from start to the end. Whereas the Quran, you find it in aspects, but not find it in aspects. Okay, so it doesn't follow right the way through. That's one aspect.
Or like a pattern. You say.
Yeah. So you do find it
yeah.
in that al-Kawthar, فَصَلِّ لِرَبِّكَ وَانْحَرْ إِنَّ شَانِكَ هُوَ الْأَبْتَرُ. Yeah. So you do find it past قُلْ أَعُوذُ بِرَبِّ النَّاسِ مَلِكِ النَّاسِ إِلَهِ النَّاسِ. So the Quran does utilize it, but it's not an adopted style from start to finish. Okay?
Right, okay.
And this led the scholars of the Arabic language to come to the conclusion that the Quran has its own unique genre, because it doesn't fall into either any of the set patterns which are within poetry, and nor does it fall into any of the aspects of just prose.
So just for,
rather, it uses
just for our audience,
saj'a, mursal, and shir.
is this just a Muslim thing, or is it also non-Muslims mention the same point?
Okay, so let's
So
Sharif
maybe
will
we can mention each other.
It's a good
No,
point.
it's a good point.
People said there's a lot of bias on the topic.
So I'm just
No,
saying,
I think obviously in
like, I
terms.
think I was at Artbury or
Yeah.
someone from Professor, and he said
But just
something.
going on this point, because obviously I think you have to link the two discussions together.
Mm.
One is balagha, and one is the, if you want to use the word genre,
Yes.
yeah, the
Yeah,
genre
yeah,
of the
okay.
Quran, yeah. So I think Abu Muhammad, he said, what is it? Is it the genre or is it the balagha, the rhetoric, yeah? And what we say is that both together, when you take them both together, and you have something which is inimitable, yeah.
Mm.
The main aspect obviously is actually the rhetoric,
Yeah.
you know, how the construct of the meaning is created. But when you take that and you link that to the genre of the Quran, yeah, in terms of the way it's unique, then you're finding something which is inimitable. So for example, and I think Wahaj just sort of mentioned how it doesn't fit. So the question, well, what is the genre of the Quran? Well, there is no way to say actually what the genre is, because you say the Quran is the Quran, isn't it?
Mm.
You say the genre is Quran. But if you look at some of the features within it, you find that the first thing that you find is you have, you know, the way you recite certain verses. You know, we can see it, you know, in Arabic language when you speak Arabic, it's quite harsh, isn't it? A lot of guttural sounds. It's very.
Yeah, depending on who you're speaking to, what
Yeah.
words you're utilising.
It can be quite, you know, quite.
yeah.
But when you recite Quran, there's a smoothness to it. Yeah.
Right.
There's a general
There's
smoothness.
emphasis on something.
Not even if the emphasis, you still find it quite. There's a smooth musicality that you can recite to it quite easily,
Yeah,
isn't it?
okay.
Yeah, within the Quran, and that's because the points of articulation, how you know, where you in the position of your mouth, you're reciting a particular word or verse, yeah, a particular word or letter. What you find is that at the end of one word, the beginning of the next, the point of articulation is very close.
Okay.
Yeah, so therefore there is a smooth transition from one word to the
So
next
give
word.
some examples on how it would not be smooth and how it would be smooth, maybe.
Look, in terms of the smooth, I can't.
I think
off the head.
there's a book called Shakhsiyat Islami. It gives some examples.
Just
of
some
that.
examples, so we
that'd
can
be
pull
great.
them out. But other aspects you can look at, even in terms of when you're talking about the interlink between the word usage and the meaning. Very simple examples, which everyone's familiar with. Surahs like Surah Nas, yeah. So you've got soft letters and you've got harsher letters within the Arabic language, yeah. So in, say for example, قل أعوذ برب الناس ملك الناس إله الناس من شر الوسواس الخناس, yeah. So even the scholars, when they elucidate upon the usage of waswas, yeah, it was specifically done using soft letters and recited in a very soft way. Why? Because that waswasa is hidden.
Right.
Yeah.
So that even further reinforces the aspect of waswas from
This is,
shaitan.
I mean, this is the other aspect of the genre. So one is the points of articulation, yeah, and how there is a smooth transition between one word and the next. And the second aspect is, in English you say onomatopoeia.
Okay, that's what I was going to say then.
Yeah,
The
onomatopoeia.
sound of the letters. So you have in Surah Fajr, is it when Allah is saying when the earth will be crushed? What's the When in Surah Fajr.
Oh, Surah Al-Fajr. Which part?
Well, Allah says and then like pounded, crushed. Like, you can tell that it's something.
That's right. So
Crushed
that's
into
Or
Yeah.
you saw in Shams like Fadam Dama alayhim like.
yeah,
So it's
yeah.
got that emphasis.
That's right, and that's
Yeah.
the nature of the again, another aspect of the genre of the Quran is that the words they resonate with the sound that they are
Right.
used.
That's amazing.
So pleasant things using light words or light letters, isn't it, in the Arabic language?
Is that in English? Did they have that in English?
Well, we have whisper, isn't it?
Yeah.
Onomatopoeia, but obviously with Arabic, because you've got more capability of expressing more words, you can use those words which are, have that link to the light letters, and those which could be used in another way, which would use heavy letters with the Arabic language, or you could use certain words with a lot of syllables, so it becomes harder to recite and pronounce. Or not harder, but as in it becomes, there's a difficulty. You have to put more emphasis in pronouncing. So when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is talking about hellfire and punishment, there's more syllables generally being used. And then when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is talking about Jannah and things which are pleasant, then the light letters are used and short syllables. Yeah. So you've got, if you now look at the picture of the Quran, you have the Quran has this ability that conveys the greatest amount of meaning in the shortest construct.
And even for people that are into tajweed, the mad further emphasizes this as well. So you've got examples like, if I said Jami' and Nas, it would, and then I use kafa, kafa means everyone in their absolute entirety, and the mad further emphasizes that to even add to the meaning in terms of the articulation. But if I was to use anything else as a specific replacement without actually utilising the mud and the specific use of the term itself and the interlink between them, you couldn't actually capture that same meaning as well.
So what you have is a jigsaw piece, where it's completely together. So the words that are being chosen, are the best words to convey the most amount of meaning, but they're also the best words to create the musicality.
So sounds of
the
Quran.
of the
I think
Quran.
musicality, we're trying to find the equivalent, but musicality doesn't necessarily fit, but we can say
Flowability.
That's the right,
Flowability. And then it's constructed within a sentence. So the syntax, how you order the words. We've not even talked about the word ordering. But how you order the words, it fits in a way which expresses the greatest amount of meaning as well.
Yeah, I think Abu Zakaria in his book Eternal Challenge, he mentions, he just gives certain examples of word order that if it was just reworded like this, it wouldn't make sense.
That's right. But this is the point. So you got the word ordering, you've got things like emphasis, the use of emphasis, you've got the words that are being chosen, you've got the fact that those words resonate with a sound which reflects the meaning and conciseness and its flowability. Right. So it's like literally there's no way you can deconstruct the Quran. Yeah.
Right.
And then in addition to that, you've got other features like you may have multiple ayat which are stated in the Quran with very small variations, and that adds to in terms of nuance, in terms of meaning as well. No, specifically just adding to this about the fact that in one construct, in tying with all these things about meaning, construct, structure, etc., there might be a small variation, there might be a particle added or taken, etc., and there's a very specific reasoning for that. So that's another aspect that can be added to that as well.
So I think when you
got the literary features as well, like you got these palindromes and.
I'm not really that happy with. I'm not really that. Palindromes.
Well, you see, if you look at Norman Ali Khan's,
it could be possible.
He's got 30 examples, and from the 30 examples, obviously when you start, obviously don't take it's not like an isolated example. When you start combining different features, and like that.
Awesome.
Then he's got like the cyclic.
He's got a video.
Those things, the cyclical structures within the Quran, it just palindromes them a little bit. Like I don't know.
Okay, not that maybe, but he uses other examples like. You can just check the video, 30 Miracles of the Quran. He's literally mentioned different, and so many shahadas, like non-Muslims were like...
No, that's right. He's, So no, I do those other aspects definitely, and I think there's a brothers. I think there's a sheikh who wrote a book about it actually called Muntasir Mir.
Oh, yes.
And then you got ring
America,
structure,
yeah.
ring structures as well. I was gonna
Ring
mention.
structures,
That's
yeah.
one
He
as well.
spoke about these things as well actually.
Well,
before.
Raymond, what's he called?
Raymond Farron.
Yeah, he wrote in
Yeah.
his book as well.
So these are probably subsidiaries to the main point.
So is that separate, like the ring structures?
No, I think it's together, but it's subsidiary, isn't
Yeah,
it?
brings it-
Yeah,
okay,
so it's
together.
a
Yeah,
branch
yeah.
aspect.
The point still goes back to, okay, was that what the Quraysh took it as a miracle for?
Mm.
If that wasn't the point, then you can't say that it was the core miracle. Does that make sense?
Right,
Yeah.
right, okay.
It's you could say added to, isn't it? Though it's something.
Maybe then
Added, but
if you've
this-
got everything together and then you bring those.
It can reinforce,
I'll
but
give
to
you-
say that what that was the actual miracle
Yeah, yeah,
itself,
you can't
the
say-
challenge
oh,
of the
right,
Quran,
right.
you
Okay,
wouldn't.
okay.
You wouldn't
I think
say.
what you could say also is that because the Quran, so we got to finish in a bit actually. Because the Quran.
What about questions? We need to take questions.
You
No,
know
no,
what?
we'll leave it for next time.
We have to do this.
Oh, we've been speaking too much.
I was going to say though, because the Quran was revealed in a different order to what we have today, and the fact that when the Quran then came together and was compiled into the order that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala ordered it for it to be in, within each of the surahs or the ayahs, then it creates that flowability. Over 23 years,
Yep.
with the verses in different chronological
Okay,
order
right.
suddenly being put together, and you've actually created this, this.
But even if the Quran
synthesis,
wasn't
yeah.
revealed orally, it was just like how it is. It will still be miraculous. Like, would you say? Or are you saying the miracle is only because of the circumstances of the revelation that?
No. I'm just saying that this adds to it.
Yeah,
Yeah,
This
yeah,
adds to it.
100%.
Yeah.
The fact that actually the Quran,
Mm.
we have today is not the order, the chronological order of the verses, but
Yeah,
yet
yeah,
they
of
still
course.
fit together.
Oh yeah, of course.
Yeah.
yeah.
So I think that's important.
I wanted to mention obviously next week inshallah I'll mention some other aspects.
Can you just touch on one point before we leave? It was a question here, and you hear it a lot,
Go on.
yeah? About where's the guarantee that this is actually a challenge from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and not something other than Allah? It's a very, and
Who said that?
just within this, you might as well hammer this point about whether it's shaitan.
Look, obviously we have to look at this from a rational point of view, isn't it? And when we say rational point of view, the first question we come to is whether Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala exists or not. Once we've proven
I've never heard
that,
that claim before.
once we know that,
Yeah.
once we know that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala exists,
I did myself.
yeah.
Already.
Once we know that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala exists, then obviously when it comes to the issue of the Quran and we're asking who the possible authors are, then we're saying who the possible rational authors.
Yeah, interesting.
Yeah, so the rational authors, non-Arab, prophets or Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the belief in Iblis or the shayateen or whoever it is,
Painted upon the Quran.
that's right, it's built upon the Quran. Yeah, so it becomes a circular argument to say that the Quran could have been produced by the shaitan.
No, but when they say that, at least at one point they're acknowledging that it's supernatural. Of course.
But we're saying
sustain that
supernatural
idea.
based upon our understanding of what the rational.
Yeah.
It was,
Of
shaitan's
course, yeah.
not a rational. They're not rational beings. Meaning
Alright,
we
okay,
can't know
yeah.
them except that the Quran informs them that they
Because
exist.
obviously the Quraysh was saying that it's magic and
Yeah.
things like that.
And also, obviously, the Quran challenges even the jinn as well, isn't it?
Oh yeah,
To do
the
something
jinn
like
is
that.
But do you know, lastly, that so in where the Quran is challenging everyone to produce a book like it,
Mm.
I don't want to say my intention, but I have a feeling that this might refer to something else. That this is not even just limited to linguistic miracle. This is probably other miracles as well.
You mean the impact of the Quran?
So yeah, so for example, in Surah 17, what Allah says, that like if jinns and the human beings got together in order to produce like the Quran, they were not able to. And obviously, there's another verse, a surah that says one chapter. I feel like that might be referring to that is referring to the linguistic miracle. But the verse where it says to produce a book, that is with the linguistic miracle, with other miracles maybe combined.
I mean, it's
Yeah.
where
Because you have to
yeah.
understand, look, the linguistic miracle, did Allah intend the linguistic miracle for every century? Since we say the Quran is timeless,
Yeah.
of course it has other miracles to it, which
Yeah.
we'll mention next week,
Yeah.
like the preservation, prophecies, maybe the
Yeah.
numerical miracle, whatever, historical, etc. So I'm thinking that this verse that Allah is saying, the book like it, is referring to like literally everything.
I think
It's not limited to its linguistic.
what I would
miracle.
say is this: is that what would I say about that word? You could say. I mean, one is obviously you have to go to the tafsir of the verse, isn't it? See how the mufassirin
Is it within the
understood it.
scope of
No, but notice what the verse says, if humans, it doesn't say Arabs. So this now refers to all
Yeah,
human
yeah.
beings.
Oh, yeah. So there's what I was going to say is about this issue of.
So it can't be referring to the linguistic
Yeah.
miracle, because if it is referring, not every human speaks Arabic.
Yeah.
Whereas the other two verses, you could say, okay, it doesn't specify human beings, specifies the people.
No, but he's saying is that there's a debate within the Mufassirin and scholars of Islam, which is that is the Quranic miracle limited to the time of the Quraysh, or is it for all mankind?
Of course, it's
Yeah.
timeless, I believe. Yeah.
No, but even either way, it doesn't really make any difference
Yeah.
because the Quraysh were the best of the Arabs. Yeah, if they failed, it means every subsequent generation will fail
Right,
because the Arabic language will get
Best.
weaker.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's definitely we can still say that the Quran is a living miracle, and that anybody who wants to challenge it, yeah, obviously the condition would be to learn Arabic. Yeah, so that's within the capability of a human being, isn't it, to learn Arabic, whether he does or doesn't.
Then we have got other objections like Surah like, the surahlikeit.com, is it, and then the truthful Quran, and then we have to respond to these objections as well.
Yeah, that's right. And
Are we going to do that for next week, or
we'll leave
what's
it.
the time?
Maybe for next week, but I think
Wait,
it
might
would
be because we're getting late.
yeah, collect some of the arguments.
Because what I want to
maybe
do
to start on that basis
Yeah,
and
yeah.
really go
next
with it.
week, what we can do is respond to some objections like Ani Sharash's truthful Quran, here in the
Yeah.
surahlikeit.com, and we can maybe
We'll let you do a bit of.
because you obviously mashallah you know Arabic as well, so you know.
Just one thing I want to say very clearly, is I discussed this with my teacher at the time, and he's a specialist in Nahu itself, but he said one thing that really puts Muslims off is to hear something recited like the Quran. So I can take an Arabic text, and recite it as a معنى البيتين النحسان. You think, someone's produced something like the Quran, and I think a lot of that is just because we have quite a superficial approach
like the
itself,
sounds, yeah.
and we associate a lot with the sound because obviously that's one thing that's magnified even in the modern day, So I think just starting on that basis, you have to be clear that certain, and one thing my teacher emphasised, he said that there was much of Jahili poetry which came recited in a similar fashion.
I heard the Bible was being recited as well, but it still doesn't sound. But you know what? It doesn't sound similar because there was an experiment done that Sheikh Muhammad Al-Rafi, he got this Japanese, and they could distinguish between what the Quran was and what was poetry.
No, but
I think if you look, if you want it, obviously we can do it next time. But when people looked at the True Furqan, I think it was, and you had some atheist ex-Muslim who was reciting it, in a very nice pleasant tone, and somebody went in and looked at that and said, "Look, he's actually changed the words."
Oh, yeah, that's what they do.
Because it doesn't fit in the flowability,
Right.
like if you were reciting Quran. So you had to change it. He put a shadda upon it when he's not meant to, and things like that. There was a harsh transition, but he covered it up, by not even using Arabic words. It wasn't.
I think
even
all
Arabic
of them are
words.
like that because someone else analysed it on YouTube. I don't know what his name was, and he's just showing how everyone copies the Quran. They'll just change.
Yeah, but what it is that they're not actually reciting Arabic words.
they have the famous example.
They're faking the words.
Musaylama, isn't it? ويترى الفيل والفيل وما أدراك ما الفيل له جسم كبير, and then he goes on to say خرطوم طويل. So he basically says الفيل, the elephant. What is the elephant? What do you know about what the elephant is? It has a big body and a long trunk.
I heard that one.
On that,
he was mocked on that.
On that note, we better end it because it's Maghrib time, man. We're not even eating.
I hope you all enjoyed, inshallah.
Okay, sure.
We shall meet next week, inshallah.
Okay,
Inshallah.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.